Well, I'm really happy to be here at MIX07 today. Thanks for coming to this session. I'm really excited to be here with you all in Las Vegas. Some of the best and brightest minds of web developers and web designers in the industry. Let me just get a quick show of hands. How many people here are web designers? Designer role. How many developers do we have in here? All right, cool. Any business decision makers? Great. So a couple of you raised your hands several times. That's wonderful. This is section XBDO3, web hosting for web designers and developers. My name's Devin Kampenhout, and I have a really exciting job at Microsoft in that I get to drive awareness of our web platform, specifically as it relates to web hosting. When we talk about, we've seen here at the Mix a lot of really wonderful examples on some of the really exciting things we can do today to drive a great experience on the web. When we talk about the end user's experience on the web, we have to look at the overall experience. To highlight this point, I'm going to give a mundane example. Most of us got here to this conference by getting on an airplane. If you look at an airplane, let's think about the overall end user experience of that airplane. The airplane is created by engineers and designers. The engineers have the job of making sure that the plane is built in a reliable, or built so that it can fly reliably and efficiently. Then the designers come in to make sure that it's configured on the interior to make sure that people have a comfortable experience while they're in that plane on the air. But to say that the end user experience ends there is ridiculous. There's a whole army of people that are involved, from maintenance people to make sure that that plane is up and flying. And then you've got your pilots, your flight attendants, et cetera, that make sure that once you're up in the air, you have the best user experience possible. So let's bring that into our world. You've got a team of web designers and developers that you've been working on for weeks on the next killer web application, the next greatest website that is going to get millions of users, going to take your company to that next level. But if you don't have the right service delivery platform behind it, this is what the end user experience might be looking like. So this drives the relevance of web hosting. So today, this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to be talking about how Microsoft enables you as web designers and developers to have a rich, total end user experience by creating a world-class service delivery platform for your hosting needs. We're also going to talk about how we partner with service providers to provide you with the capability of delivering that great end user experience to your customers. So we're going to be answering two questions in our discussion today. First is how service providers meet the needs of the growing developer and designer community by partnering with Microsoft. And the second is what the technical advantages of Windows hosting. This is an eye chart by design. What it's meant to highlight is all of the variety, the great depth of programs that we have from a business and a technical perspective to enable our service providers in the hosting scenario. We have a wide variety of areas that we deliver to them so that they in turn can deliver to you the best experience for your customers. But rather than listening to me tell you about how great Microsoft is, I actually brought a couple of partners up here today to tell you about what they're doing with our platform and to drive some awareness of some key points that you need to consider when you're looking at web hosting. So with that, let me introduce you to Derek Curtis from Crystal Tech.
Good morning. Okay, good. When I sat down and talked to Devin about this presentation and what I wanted to talk about, when we looked at the abstract of the variety of things that I could talk about, two things really stuck out to me. The first is the support that's available for people who are developing on the Windows platform, the support that's available to make that user experience that he talked about extremely beneficial and extremely rewarding for the people on the other end. The other aspect I wanted to talk about was sort of the components, the variety of components that are part of Windows-based web hosting and what you kind of expect utilizing them. So the first question is there good Windows support for designers and developers? In my estimation, and what I hope I'm going to try and prove to you, is that, yeah, regardless of how you want to look at the term support, there is a very, very wide variety of resources available to you to not only learn more about the platform, but if you're already involved in developing on the platform, to get answers to questions. So I say, depending on how you answer or how you term support or how you define support, and really to make this as brief as possible, I kind of broke it down into 3 main areas. The first is the availability and viability of Windows as a hosting platform. Are there people out there that are offering Windows-based web hosting so that you can host your applications, you can host your websites? Another definition is, what resources are available to you? I mean, if you have questions and you need answers to questions, what's out there? Both from within the hosting community as well as from outside of the hosting community. The third definition really is, as a host, what do we provide to you? I mean, to get you over those humps and to get you the answers to the questions that you have. From the availability and viability standpoint, I did a very, very informal survey. Extremely informal, actually. I went to a couple of websites, HostCount and Netcraft, and kind of tried to get a list together of a decent-sized list of the top 20 web hosts that were somewhat similar across the lists. And I just went to each website to look to see who offered Windows and who didn't. Of the top 20, 80% offered Windows hosting in one variety or another. You go beyond web hosting, you look at registrars. A lot of registrars offer a hosting solution. Of those registrars, who offers Windows? Well, when you look at it, the variety of the largest resellers or the registrars out there, GoDaddy, Network Solutions, Register.com, they all offer Windows hosting in one flavor or another, either shared or dedicated, and sometimes in VPS. The last topic is Windows is actually gaining market share. You go to Netcraft, you look at their web server survey, they do one every month. Windows is increasing in market share. So it is gaining a viability as a hosting platform, and it is being widely adopted by users. The other aspect, when you look at access to resources, if I have a question about how, I have a question on this particular .NET component, or I need a code snippet, or I need a resource, I need a book, so I need someone to recommend a book to use. What's out there? Well, if you do a search, and again, this is extremely informal, you do a search for some variety of topics, and you look at how many results you get. For example, I did a search for ASP.NET resources. Got over 7 million results. If I took it a little deeper and did a search for Windows web hosting, I got over 103 million results. Now, from a relevancy standpoint, I didn't look at all of them, obviously, but you start digging down deep into pages, into the double digits of pages for search results, and the majority of places I saw did offer some sort of access to information about one of these things. You go further and look at SQL Express or SQL tutorials, there's like 30 million. Newer technologies, Ajax tutorials, again, 30 to 40 million. I'm sure there's going to be, after this especially, Silverlight and WPFE and all the whole bit, there's just going to be a ton of resources out there very quickly for people to utilize. From a Microsoft perspective, what does Microsoft offer? Well, we as a Microsoft web host, we use their products and technologies almost exclusively. So we also have people asking us, where can I go to find this information or that? A few of the things that Microsoft offers, one of the first things I wanted to talk about, if you haven't seen it already, is the Beginner Developer Learning Center, something that Microsoft just recently rolled out in conjunction with its Visual Studio Express product. This is actually really neat. I've given my 13-year-old cousin access to, or provided her with this information, and I provided my 46-year-old brother with the same information because my cousin is extremely creative. She's very interested in building web applications and websites. This is a perfect place for her to go. My brother, when I mention technology, he just goes, psh, he has no clue what I'm talking about. So this website is very good to give a very base level introduction to building applications for the web as well as building Windows applications for the desktop. There's 2 different tiers that you can follow and learn about. You can't talk about Microsoft support without talking about ASP.NET website. Probably one of the best resources for information on ASP.NET. One of the greatest things about ASP.NET, apart from their forums, of course, is the resource page. Right here you can get all kinds of code snippets, download components, find recommendations for books, read white papers. There's also a section on those of us who offer ASP.NET web hosting. You can't talk about, again, Microsoft without talking about the IIS.NET. IIS website is another great resource for learning about Internet Information Services. Version 6, which is the last, and of course everyone's talking about IIS 7 now. And of course I can't mention IIS 7 without throwing out a shameless plug. Today we're actually announcing that we're offering a hosting plan, a beta hosting plan, based off of IIS 7 and Longhorn Server. So take a look at our website. If you have questions about it, you can come talk to me after. But we should have that published today. And it is, of course, everyone's favorite 4-letter word. It's free. So it's going to be free from now until IS7 and Longhorn are actually released to market. What other outlets are there apart from Microsoft? Well, obviously, I told you that there were millions and millions of search results for various topics, and here's a few of the sites that I've looked at before and we've had business with in one way or another. .NET Junkies, another great resource site for .NET. The ASP.NET index sites, 411ASP and Aspen.com. Even the old-timers W3 schools offer you all kinds of tutorials from HTML all the way up through VB.NET and C#. And then my favorite, and I'm going to try and steal this for the name of our softball team, .NET Freaks. I thought it was an excellent website. From a hosting perspective, what kind of support is out there? Well, first of all, obviously an environment's only as good as the people who administer it. You're going to have a lot of people say that Linux is more secure than Windows. Windows is more reliable than Linux. And really, in my estimation, and maybe I'm jaded and biased on this because we're a Windows host, but really I think it truly comes down to the people that administer the back end. If they're good, it doesn't matter what you're running, whether it's Sun, whether it's the Mac, the server, web server, IIS, Linux, it doesn't really matter. Another thing that Microsoft has done to ensure that web hosts have the support that they need is they recently released a hosting exam for Windows-based web hosting. It's a great certification process. Again, lends viability to Microsoft platform as being there and available, and they're giving you the support that you need to make sure that you're able to do what you need to do. You have a good core skill set to be able to administer a Windows-based environment. Excuse me. And finally, those of us who provide Windows-based web hosting, we're really pretty good at what we do. I'm a big believer in the power of the spoken word and the power of the referral. Word of mouth advertising is obviously the best. You go to any of the sites I've listed, ASP.NET, even some of the more mundane sort of web hosting talk websites and whatnot, if you look for somebody to recommend a good Windows host, there's going to be a lot of people that have opinions on it. So you can generally trust what they have to say. There's also support that we offer as a web host to end users. There's actually quite a few ways that we can do that. I wanted to touch on a couple and then give a real quick little demo of one. First is a knowledge base article. A lot of the samples I'm going to show you obviously are not as agnostic as I'd like them to be because I have access to all of our information, but a lot of hosts offer knowledge base articles. The ones that we have is over 1,000 articles that people can access that goes for everything from how to set up your account to how to minimize the amount of messages you store on an IMAP server. There's also public forums, which is a great way for you to get to know not only information about the host, but also interact with customers of the host. Some web hosts offer forums for actual support, where you can go and you can post support questions. Some offer them like us. Ours is essentially just a community website. We try to minimize the amount of support that we do through our forum and just make it more of a community-based thing where customers can ask other customers for solutions to problems. Ours has 90,000 posts, 60,000 topics, and it's funny, oddly enough, it's only accessed by about 10% of our customer base, but trust me, they are a very vocal 10%. The other way that we can provide support is through automation, building of a customized control panel. There's a lot of control panels out there that web hosts are using. Helm, cPanel even, if you're on the Linux box, because they don't have a Windows port yet. But a custom control center is a great repository of information that Windows-based web hosts use, not only to make it easier for you to administer your account, but it also allows you to do things faster and quicker than maybe interaction with the web host. It lets you get back to the stuff that you really know, which is how to develop and how to build those sites. And if I could, real quick, I want to give you an example of some of the things that we do by logging into my account. Take a look at some of the automation functions that are available from within a web host control panel. There are certain things that are built in that are real time. They're done in real time. From a site administration standpoint, you can create FTP accounts, set users, create file permissions. You can actually request a site restore, a full site restore. Your custom error pages, your default pages. You can even go down to start application starting points if you've got a .NET app. DNS, full DNS administration, database administration for MySQL, Microsoft SQL, backups, restores, the whole bit. There's just a ton of things in here that a web host is going to build into their offering that give you the support that you need and the access to information that allows you to be successful. So let's revisit the question, is there good support out there for Windows-based developers and web hosts? Hopefully you see that there is. There's a wide variety of things, both inside and outside the community, that you can take advantage of and that can help make that user experience that much more positive. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about as well, real briefly, because I don't want to belabor any of this, and a lot of the information you're getting during these 3 days is going to be a lot more in-depth than what I have. But are there benefits to Windows web hosting, and really what makes up Windows-based web hosting? Well, one of the nice things about Microsoft is that they've created a platform that allows you to run a variety of different scripting environments, languages, and frameworks right on the Windows platform. PHP, MySQL, Perl, you can obviously even run Apache on it. And I think as developers, you may know, maybe it's open for argument, but I would argue, and I have people that will back me on this, that PHP on Windows runs a bit better than .NET does, at least right now, on the Linux or any other platform. Hopefully that's going to change, though. Scalability, reliability, and security of Windows is there. Again, it goes back to Windows web hosts are really only as good as the people who architect them and administer them, but those people are generally really, really good at what they do. So they know how to make a hosting environment that's scalable, reliable, and extremely secure. And it's only getting better. A lot of the things that we were talking about these last 3 days, MIX07, the Silverlight release. If anyone attended any of the sessions on PHP and Windows, Microsoft is working with Zend to really make that one-to-one relationship between the developer and the platform. There's not going to be, hopefully in the future, any distinction between one or the other. It's all going to be able to run on one. Now, from a component standpoint, again, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail on these. IS6 is much better and much more reliable than IS5 was. There were changes made to IS6 that makes it easier for a web host building a custom application to be able to customize the user experience for the end user, make things easier for them to administer. And then there's the almighty application pool, which, as you probably know, is a way to be able to segment your application from another on the same server. ASP.NET 2.0, ASP.NET 3.0 now. I heard rumors about discussions about 3.5 and potentially 4. A lot more performance benefits over 1.1. The user controls allow greater productivity for designers and for developers, well, for developers mostly. The use of master pages. Use of master pages is a great way to be able to create websites quickly and easily and reuse certain components of that website so that you don't have to keep redoing the HTML and whatnot. Ajax, .NET and JavaScript allow you to create rich internet apps. Silverlight, again, not going to go to a whole lot of this. I actually have the MSDN site down here for examples, but as Scott Guthrie mentioned, the Silverlight.net is up and live. So definitely take advantage of taking a look at that. So really the tool sets are available too. Everyone got a copy of Expression Studio. It's a darn sight better than Front Page ever was, especially the designer piece of it. So make sure you make good use of it. Visual Studio Express, again, a free download, sort of a smaller version of Visual Studio and yet very, very powerful. Allows you to create very dynamic-based applications and websites very quickly. And then there are the others. I came from a background of using Dreamweaver before it was even Dreamweaver. And I really liked it, and it lends credibility and viability to the platform because now those tool sets that are manufactured outside of Microsoft actually allow you to create sites and code based off of C#, C++, VB.NET, even legacy and classic ASP. So really, what it kind of boils down to is there's a variety of support options available. There's a variety of tool sets available. There are a variety of components that make up Windows-based web hosting. And all that combined makes for an extremely, extremely interactive and exciting user experience. So you definitely need to make sure you check everything out.
Thanks, Derek. So one of the things, he brought to light a lot of the things that they're using from us that help drive the support of their platform. They do a heck of a lot behind the scenes to make sure that your applications are going to be running the way that you design them to. Like you said, it's really what these hosting providers give you at the end of the day is the power of their people to make sure that your applications are running on the back end. And there's a lot more. We're actually going to leave a lot of time for questions at the end of the session if you have more questions about what's happening on the back end. But with that, let me introduce you to David Kidd. Oops, wrong way. Who is from Vario.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm with Vario. Vario is a Windows web hosting company. We've been doing web hosting since the beginning for all intents and purposes. And what I'm going to talk to you about today is security and scalability. And we're going to kind of go through a little peek under the covers and show you guys how you can scale and how you can check to see if even what you already have is secure. And with that, I'm going to start with an announcement. Vario has implemented a series of test drive accounts that are available on the Vario.com website. I'll show it to you in a moment. But essentially, the test drive accounts are real accounts. A couple of things have been disabled, but it allows you to test your code, test your content, test new code, new content, without having to pay for anything. Check to see how it works, check to see how the tools work, and how the tools allow you to scale your site or your online presence. I'm going to start with a question. Which has better security, Windows or Linux? Anybody have any ideas? Well, it's a trick. Go ahead. Yes and no. I would say it's a trick question. It's really not a matter of better or worse. It's a matter of which options are available to you. And I would argue, and I want to make the argument now, that on the Windows side, it's really not a matter of better or worse. On the Windows side, there's just more options you have, more things you can control. Windows security is based around the concept of configured isolation. And that's just a process of using the natural things that occur within a hosting server to allow you to isolate things. In the Windows world, isolation is achieved through the use of app pools. If you don't know what app pools are, hang on, we'll get there. Put simply, I don't want to bore people that are more technical than I am, application pools are secure containers for websites. So they're essentially just containers. When we talk about Windows hosting, hosters usually host in one or two modes. One is low isolation, one is high isolation. There's benefits and drawbacks to both. You generally won't know when you go to a company's website which one it is. I'm going to show you how to check. And the benefits to low isolation hosting, multiple accounts share the resources of an app pool, which for the hoster allows better server density and some simplicity functions sometimes. But when you get to high isolation hosters, you get one dedicated app pool per account. The densities aren't as high on the servers, on the hoster's side, but you get a little better site performance, and you get some security options that aren't available to you on the shared hosting level. There's a function call in Windows known as revert to self. What it does essentially is allow you to, if you're in a shared app pool, for example, it enables you to act as the app pool itself. And what that means is if you're in a shared hosting environment using high isolation hosting, you get a little bit of a reduced attack surface. In low isolation hosting, every account on the server is secure from the outside world. The difference between low isolation hosting and high isolation hosting is that in high isolation hosting, the accounts on the server are secure from each other. And what do I mean by this? Well, I had toyed with the idea of doing this on some competitors' accounts, and I was counseled against that. But what we have noticed in low isolation hosters, something kind of funny happens. And that's that when they do shared app pooling, well, the security ID for the app pool itself actually doesn't change from app pool to app pool. And what that means is not only can I revert to self and function as the app pool owner, I can also see everything on the server itself. So what that means is if I know what I'm doing, yes, everything on the server is isolated from the outside world. It's not necessarily isolated from everybody else on the server. And if you're doing shared app pooling, some hosters can get several thousand accounts on a server. Well, that's several thousand people that have the potential, and if they know what they're doing, could investigate and see how to check into your site. They only get read access, but they can read your databases, they can read your content. If you've got code you've been working on that's yours and you don't want to share it, they can see that too. We're going to do a quick demo here. Vario has implemented a series of control panel videos, and I hope this works. Here we go. I'm going to take you through one now. This is a short, I think it runs about 2 minutes. It actually takes you through our control panel, but it actually lets you see what this means, how it works, and what you can do to check. And go.
From the Hosting Control Panel main menu, let's navigate to the App Pools and Resources page and drill down into an app pool. Note that we have 2 sites in this app pool. I'll navigate to the first site where an identity thief has written a page that reads credit card information from an Access database stored in the second site. We can see their credit card data. This demonstrates that with 2 accounts in one app pool, one site can see the other's files. To protect your sub-hosted sites, we recommend that you isolate them. I'll go back into the App Pool Management page and select Isolate on the second site. Now that it's in its own app pool, I can go back to our identity thief site and try to steal credit card data once again. This time, site isolation causes it to fail. But don't take my word for it, try it yourself. I've included the identity thief's code in the comments section below this video. From the Hosting Control Panel main menu, let's navigate to the App Pools and Resources.
Let's not do that. The author of the video is in the audience for this today, Matt Legata. Matt, could you please stand up for a moment? Matt is the Windows hosting architect at Vario. Matt and I will be here after this session and tomorrow at Mix Chat. If you want to get into this, if you want to see the revert to self code, if you want someone to take you through how to do this and check whatever you're running now to see if it's secure or not, we can do that. We can answer other questions as well. Real quickly, again, if you go to, let's see if I can pull it up here, Vario.com today, our homepage, you'll see the test drive accounts. All you have to do is put in your email address, and you will, hopefully, you can also download the white paper that gets a little more in depth into this. But this will allow you access to a real-time account for free, no obligation. It essentially, you can start playing with these functions and tools yourself. Moving on to scalability. What Vario has done on its platform is very unique in the industry, and that is we've created a series of products at the shared hosting level, and then we get into virtual and managed servers, all of which share a code base and a control panel. What this means to you is that if you build a site on a shared hosting account and you've now outgrown your needs for the shared hosting account and you need to move to something else, you can actually move your account up to a virtual or dedicated server, and your code will work with no changes. There are features and functions that we enable to allow you to do more things. I'll go through them now. But essentially, you can migrate to a virtual or dedicated server, and you don't have to change anything that you've already built. Oops, wrong way. There's some concepts that are fairly unique to Vario that can help you. They're built in such a way that allow you to manage your account better. The first one is the concept of resource virtualization. When you move up to our virtual and managed servers, what we do is we actually take the CPU and RAM within the account and allow you to control it. We've also provided site isolation capabilities and subhosting. Subhosting is actually available all the way down to our shared hosting accounts. Our lowest level starter plan has subhosting capability. And what I mean by subhosting is it's not just a bunch of redirection pointers. It's a true MIX07 site that the server will see as a separate independent site. And again, this starts on our low end. And I mentioned a few moments ago that when on our shared plans that they have, each account has a dedicated app pool, and that sharing app pools is sometimes bad. Well, we allow you to share your own app pool. So if you're managing the sites, you're not going to steal from yourself, or you're not going to hack into your own stuff. So we provide that ability to you. When you move up to our higher end plans, I'll discuss more how that works. That works a little differently in a moment. We also offer bandwidth compression. And again, these things are available exclusively from Vario. Oops, wrong way again. App pool management. On our shared hosting plans, again, you get one app pool for your account, so there's not really anything to manage. When you move up to our virtual managed servers, we give you multiple app pools, and I'll explain how that works in a moment. But in order to manage the resources within those app pools, Vario has implemented a concept known as the virtual resource unit. The virtual resource unit is simply a way to carve the CPU and RAM of a server into logical units so you can actually adjust them as you want to. When you get into our shared hosting accounts again, VRUs are enabled by app pool. So on a shared hosting plane, you only get one app pool, therefore there isn't really anything to manage. When you move up to a virtual or a managed server and you've got multiple app pools, well, now you can say, okay, I have my main site or my company site, I have some staging sites or some promotional sites. I can group all of those or isolate all of those, and I can say, I want my primary site, it's got to be up all the time, and I always got to have resources. I want it to have 80% of my resources. And I want to take the rest of my resources and dump them off over to these other small staging sites or something like that. I can essentially carve up any way I want to the resources of the server. Sub-hosting at our virtual and managed servers, again, it's available on our shared hosting accounts as well. But when you get to a virtual or managed server, sub-hosting works a little bit differently. You do get multiple application pools, and you can essentially, if you notice that one site is poorly coded or beating up the server, or is you're on some site that's just exceptionally popular for some reason, you can isolate, essentially on the fly, that site into its own app pool, give it a certain amount of resources, and then keep that site from taking down your account or from using up all of your resources. This is a concept, again, it's kind of unique to Vario, it's very unique to Vario. And what it does is it allows you control of what's going on with your CPU and RAM. And it also guarantees that your site will be up if you're on another server with another account that's recently been mentioned on Oprah and suddenly everybody in the world is pinging it. Virtual resource units also work in such a fashion as they allow your account to stay up even if someone else is trying to beat up the box. So you're guaranteed that your site's going to be up no matter what else is going on with someone else's account, whether it's poorly coded, whether it's got, again, it was on Oprah or something. You're guaranteed to be up because of the way the virtual resource technology works. Bandwidth compression. This is a unique one for Vario as well. And if you've ever heard of the web accelerator technologies for dial-up accounts, this is the same thing, only we enable it on the server. Hosters, including Vario up until recently, used to enable default this function to off. Usually it's an on or off function for every account on the server. Hosters typically turn it off because it uses a little bit of CPU, RAM, and disk, and hosters want all those resources to be available for their users. They don't want to use extra things that maybe somebody's not going to use. Well, because Vario allows you to manage your own CPU and RAM, we can also enable you to turn on bandwidth compression for your sites so that your visitors to your site or visiting browsers to your site will have a much higher performance, a much better experience than they would otherwise. Vario's also done some very unique things with MS SQL in recent days. For starters, we implemented the concept of database partitioning. What this means is if I have a certain amount of SQL space that comes with my account, even on my shared hosting account, I can take that space and partition it into multiple databases. So I can have multiple MS SQL databases available for my sites or for whatever other things I need them for. We've also implemented the concept, or not the concept, we've also implemented database ownership. What this means, I'll give you an example to explain it. Up until recently, we had .NET Nuke 3.5 on our platform. And we looked at upgrading to .NET Nuke 4.0. And one of the things we noticed was that if you've got a .NET Nuke 3.0 for the 3.5 site, and you move that up to 4.0, a lot of things break. And we don't have control over that. So rather than fight this patch or update battle, what we did was we took .NET Nuke off the platform and we put in database ownership. Well, if you know anything about .NET Nuke, it needs DBO if it's not installed on the platform. Well, what this means for you is that you can use .NET Nuke on your client PC, upload everything to the server, and everything will work just fine because DBO is there. Another concept, or another thing that we've implemented on the MS SQL database platform as well is the concept of multiple users. I can create multiple users who are not database owners, but who can publish to the database if they need to. Again, Matt and I will be here after this session and tomorrow if you want to come talk to us. If you want Matt to email you the revert to self code or to work with you for a minute to figure out how you can check your sites to see if they're as secure as possible. Again, today and tomorrow at MIX07. Thank you.
Thanks, David. So you've seen a couple different hosters and what they're doing. You can see that they're both providing value in different ways on different aspects of our platform. Vario does a lot to virtualize and give you a lot of control over your environment. Crystal Tech is doing some really great things as well as far as enabling a wide variety of applications to run on their platform as well. There's a couple of very important things to consider when you're developing an application to run well in a hosted environment. David spent a significant amount of his talk talking about security and talking about application isolation. That's a pretty significant issue when it comes to your application. You don't want it. There's a concept that many of you are probably aware of as in ASP.NET that is trust levels. So with revert to self, if you're running that in full trust, which is the default trust level for ASP.NET, you'll run into that issue where if you're running in shared application pools, you could potentially gain access to other resources that are running in separate application pools on the box. One way around that is to, instead of developing your code in full trust, and many hosters have done this, is to set ASP.NET to default to medium trust. This is a very common challenge for hosters today, and it's not something the hosters control, but it's really up to developers to fix their code. Because one of the problems is if you're developing by default for full trust, and then you go to a hoster, say Crystal Tech by default enables medium trust because they're security conscious and security minded. What happens is your code all of a sudden breaks because some of the functions that you're calling are not enabled by default on full trust. And then you come to Derek and say, hey, what's wrong? It's broken. It's really not a matter of they're actually looking for in your best interest as far as enabling that medium trust because they realize that they're running in low isolation mode and they want to be able to do that in as best of a way possible. And I'm probably putting words in Derek's mouth. I'm not sure exactly how they have that implemented, but I'm just using Crystal Tech as a potential example there. Another key concept to keep into consideration when you're developing your code or your application is think of it how it's going to be deployed by the end user. Is it an application that you are creating for yourself that you're going to be implementing in a hoster, or is it an application, let's think about .NET Nuke, for example. .NET Nuke is a community-driven open source application, and there are a lot of really great developers that contribute to that project. One of the challenges that we had with .NET Nuke in the early days is that these developers were writing that code, they were writing it on their own desktop box, possibly implementing on a dedicated server, but it did not fit very well into a shared hosting model where there are lots of hosters that are going to be shared in a multi-tenant environment on that server. So when you're developing code, you got to think about things. When I'm creating a database, am I setting it up with calls that require DBO ownership of that database? A lot of hosters don't like to grant DBO access to their customers. It gives them too much access to resources, and it's not very good in a multi-tenant model. So if you want the broadest distribution, the broadest acceptance by hosters of your application, you got to be able to think of things of this nature. So let me talk for a few minutes about what we're doing with IIS and with Zend. We've done a lot of work to create some world-class development platforms in ASP.NET, but we also realize that there are a lot of people out there that like to use other development platforms such as PHP, Perl, Python, and perhaps you've seen today some of the things that we're doing to really expand our platform. One of the things that we're doing with MIX07, which I'll talk about in a minute, in more detail, but one of the things that we're doing is we've actually gone out in partnership with Zend. You probably saw that announcement about 6 months ago to drive some base enhancements to PHP. Traditionally, some of the challenges of running PHP on our platform was that by its very nature, PHP is not a thread-aware application, whereas IIS is designed to run multi-threaded. Because of that, if you were to run PHP or your PHP app or set up PHP on your server, you had two choices. You could either run it as an ISAPI, in which case it'd be integrated into IIS, which traditionally is a faster model of implementing PHP than the other method, which is implementing it as a CGI. If you implement PHP as a CGI, it's heavier, it takes more it takes more resources to start up and kill that or process the request and then break down that CGI process. The challenge, however, with using ISAPI instead of PHP was because PHP was not thread aware, especially if you implemented a third-party module into that, it could actually cause some significant errors that could come up on the system, and it was pretty unreliable. So the workaround solution to create the best of both worlds is a piece of software called FastCGI. And the IIS team has gone out and worked with FastCGI and created a FastCGI implementation that will work on IIS 5, IIS 6, and IIS 7. If you go to IIS.net today, you can actually go and download a free technology preview of FastCGI. And what it will do is it actually creates a pool of running processes that will, when a request comes in for PHP, it will, instead of having to spin up a new process and take all the resources associated to do that, it just processes the request, fires it off, and when it's over, instead of killing that process off, it recycles it. So effectively, at the end of the day, you get the same performance in the CGI version as you would get on the ISAPI implementation, but without the multi-threaded or the problems of the non-thread-aware PHP, because it's not directly integrated into IIS as an ISAPI. So along with these improvements that we've made as far as implementing FastCGI, we've actually gone and contributed to PHP itself. To date, we've solved several bugs. We've gone back to the community and given that back to PHP, and we're really making an effort there to be a great player in that space. So Bill Staples, who's the group program manager for IIS, is actually here today. I'm not sure if he already had his session or he did. So some of you might have seen his session, but we actually have, to date, we've launched our IS7 Beta 3, or Longhorn Server Beta 3, which has a go-live license for IS7. So if you want to go out and try IS7 today, you can do that. Derek mentioned that Crystal Tech is actually one of the partners that we've worked with as far as implementing this to date. You can go up and sign up for free on there for an IS7 test account. We've actually got a number of other hosting partners that companies that we've partnered with in order to drive adoption of this. This talk is not specifically about IS7. I could probably talk about IS7 for the next 2 hours if I wanted to, but it's really exciting. It takes everything that we've done to date on the hosting platform and really extends it for you guys. So it's something really to look forward to. It's available now today in the beta format. I highly recommend that you go out and start playing with it and testing your code against it, making sure that it works. It's a great way to get that out there today. So in conclusion, these are the two questions that we set out to answer. Hopefully we did. We're actually, one of the great things about MIX is it's designed to be a discussion. And so we've left plenty of time in order to actually have questions and answers. So with that, let's open up the floor. If you have any questions for myself or for any of our partners, just step up to the mic and we'll be happy to answer them for you.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, hi. To either of you two hosters, I'm wondering what you can share in terms of your uptime, if you have like it amortized over a year, and how that might compare to some of the Unix boxes.
I'm sorry, uptime?
Yeah.
Do you want to take that one? Or?
We could both do it if you want.
Well, it's Vario is a company that has historically been a Unix hoster. I would say up until recently. We're still a Unix hoster, but generally speaking, we have found that both platforms have a remarkably high uptime. Windows at Vario, our experience has been a little better. Yeah.
And to kind of touch on that as well, you know, it's very easy to couch end user license agreement or an uptime agreement with a lot of vagaries. You know, what we have done, what we've always done since our inception is try and aggregate uptime across the platform, not just server uptime, but site uptime, network uptime, and the whole bit. So we generally hit like a 99.5. We strive for 99.5. I don't believe we've ever had a problem meeting that. But again, that's sort of everything. It's not just server uptime or process or service uptime. It's everything across the board.
Thank you. Just also on that same note, do you have more scheduled downtime on the Windows side than the Unix due to things like, patches, service packs, things like that?
We're all Windows, so yeah.
Well, I have some experience with both. Are you asking for downtime?
Scheduled downtime.
Scheduled downtime?
Do you have to perform more scheduled maintenance on the Windows side than on the Unix side?
Well,
meaning your non-business hours downtime is higher on the Windows side.
Well, some of the security implications of Unix or Linux versus Windows hosting, they're just different. So we don't really have more scheduled downtime necessarily. We do more frequent updates on the Windows side, simply because Microsoft's got the most popular operating system in the world. Therefore, it's the one everyone's going to go try to poke holes in. But it really isn't a matter of having more downtime or not.
In that regard, actually, when it comes to security, if we're just talking about Apache versus IIS-6, IIS-6 has a much better track record. I'll be the first to admit that in the early days, it was not that way. But with our recent implementations with IIS-6 and IIS-7, we have far fewer. There has not yet to date been a major security vulnerability that was published for IIS-6, whereas Apache has had several that have had to gone out and been patched. So.
All right, first off, I'd like to thank everybody. That was a great presentation, I thought, from both of you. I'm actually a Crystal Tech employee. I'm one of the senior developers. I'm also a .NET Nuke project lead. So the issue about the DBO is actually false. .NET Nuke does not need DBO to run. Another thing that I thought in the presentation was the revert to self. Like Devin pointed out, that does not work in medium trust, of which ASP.NET 2.0 should always be run in medium trust. The demos actually look like they're run on ASP.NET 1.1. The permissions that were returned back, the errors that were returned back, were ASP.NET 1.1 errors, not 2.0. So just for everybody in the audience, ASP.NET 2.0 run under medium trust will actually throw a security.file.io permission error instead of the DB error that was seen. So you cannot go outside your own application. So I just want to point that out real quick.
I should have pointed out, when I was talking about .NET Nuke, I was referring to the early days before we started working with .NET Nuke about a year and a half ago to help them to improve some of those aspects,
Correct,
one of which was the DBO thing.
Charles Nero spent a lot of time in the practice and patterns lab probably 6 months ago to help perform that application quite a bit. With the DBO, you can actually choose the database owner, whether it's the DBO or whether it's actually another name.
Yeah, it's a good point in that you do have to be aware of what the issue is so that you can, when you're creating your application, and .NET Nuke is a great example because they created .NET Nuke and they didn't realize the broad extent of how it would be used until after the fact. And then it took a lot of work to get things fit so that it would work well in a multi-tenant hosted environment.
Exactly.
As opposed to setting it up that way initially.
And we're still making strides every day, every release, as far as being able to play well in a shared environment. The early versions, 1.0, 2.0, definitely were not shared friendly. The early versions of 4 consumed quite a bit of resources compared to the 3.0 versions. Now, at the 4.51 version, it's smoking fast. So.
Cool. Both of your points are exactly accurate. And I'll clarify just a hair. When we were running .NET Nuke on our platform a while back, we did not have DBO. So you do not need DBO to run .NET Nuke. As a hoster, it's not required. You implement it without it. When we made the decision to pull .NET Nuke off the platform, we implemented DBO so that someone could run DBO on their client machine and still post .NET Nuke content to the platform. So you could still use .NET Nuke. Gotcha. It wasn't a matter of it did or didn't work without DBO.
Gotcha.
So, in terms of the revert to self, in medium trust mode, revert to self will not work in ASP.NET. However, it'll work in other languages.
Correct, which is the case in any trust mode. Because trust mode only affects .NET applications. It does not affect legacy ASP, PHP, anything like that. So.
Great. Any other questions?
So I would like to ask a question about if you guys are using any homegrown provisioning system to provision the users and the servers, or are you using any Microsoft technology to do that?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Provisioning. Are we homegrown or are we using Microsoft?
Okay.
Yeah. From our aspect, we've always, we always built everything in house. The control center that I kind of gave you a brief description of, everything was built in-house. We do our own provisioning, we do our own updates, the whole bit. When it comes down to actually manipulating IIS, that's code that we've written. Alec and the team that he's on has written everything from back in the day when it was ASP all the way up to 1.0, .NET 1.0, when 1.0 first came out, 1.1, and now it's a 2.0. It's a 2.0 app. So everything is homegrown, which is when I talked about the hosting exam. I'm more critical of that exam more than anything else. I mean, it's a great feature, and it's something out there that Microsoft has really put a lot of time and effort into making a certification process for hosters, but it is sort of Microsoft-centric. Everything is based off of the Windows-based hosting program that they've developed, which is, I think, a 4.5 now, just a 4.5 release or whatever, which is a great product, but it gives you a very good base core skill set on how to administer a Windows environment. But for those of us who have built everything in-house and have grown up with it, essentially, it's good. It's good that it's out there, but we kind of have our own way of doing things. We're mavericks, I guess, in that respect. So.
Yeah, so to his point, we have a series of solutions that we provide for hosters. One of which you referred to as a solution for Windows-based hosting. It's a set of guidelines, best practices, sample code, tools, etc. So basically, taking all the products that comprise the web platform at Microsoft and give that guidance to hosters so that they can, see how to implement it in a hosted fashion. Now, that said, you talk to every hoster, they're going to find different ways of doing things. We offer the guidance, and it's up to them to really figure out how to add value of their own on top of our platform. So that's how we work together. And that certification, like you said, is really about, we can't do it about how Crystal Tech does it or how Vario does it. All we can really do is what our recommendations are. So.
Well, that's, again, the nice thing about the partnership. Again, I could have probably spent a lot more time talking about the value of the partnership with Microsoft. But for Crystal Tech, as a Windows-only web host, we've had access on a beta level to a variety of different things. I mean, like I said, .NET 1, when it first came out, and we were part of the beta program for that. We've been betas for SharePoint v3. We're part of things that people didn't even think of would be turned into services like Team Foundation Server and stuff like that. So the ability to interact with essentially the developers of the product that you're offering is just completely and utterly invaluable. And over the last several years, Microsoft has really made great efforts to reach out to those of us in the hosting industry and provide that level of support. So. Well, from an employee standpoint, we run about 75 employees. Customer base-wide, we're hosting just this side of 100,000 domains, about 60,000 accounts. We're not the biggest out there, but we're not small. So we've been around for about, actually this year is our 10th year anniversary. So
75 is also sales and production.
Yeah, everybody, right.
Only technical development and system administrators.
Everybody, yeah, we got. Let's see. All of our support staff are essentially network admins. They have access to the server level, down to the root level. There's about 35 of those running 24/7. Our network operations, we have everything separated out. Network operations is separate from server operations, which is separate from support, which is separate from sales and the whole bit. But network and server ops are about evenly matched, maybe about 10 each, I think, something like that, 10 to 15, I think, depending on which group you're talking about.
Vario's got, I can't actually give you a straight answer because we have some OEM confidentiality agreements that allow me not to say. But if you go check Netcraft, Vario's got 45 or 50,000 accounts that are Vario-owned accounts. Vario's also an OEM provider for a lot of major telcos and cable companies. So we've got confidentiality agreements that can't reveal their customer information, and it's not reflected on Netcraft.
Plus, you got to realize too. I mean, you talk about how many accounts. I mean, I can go and I can see GoDaddy has 4 million customers, but they provide a hosting account to everybody. So they're not really necessarily active hosters. You look at IP counts. It's very difficult to nail down if you're actually doing some sort of due diligence. How many people are hosted with this particular provider or that particular provider or whatever. So.
I want to step up to the mic. We're recording this session, so if you have a question, if you'll just step up to the mic, please.
Hosting, do you guys are also hosting applications for other customers, like their own homegrown applications on as a service provider?
Sure. Well,
and how that is a difference from providing a web hosting?
I didn't get the full question, sorry.
This is, apart from hosting, let me paraphrase, apart from hosting websites, we also host applications for service providers.
And how is that different from, for you guys, an experience hosting an application for customers compared to hosting an IaaS website for customers?
The politically correct answer would be, yeah, we do both. But to be honest with you, I don't really know. I mean, we have shared segment, we have a dedicated segment. What the customers do on the dedicated segment is really kind of entirely up to them. And we do what policing we can from a customer base to make sure they're not violating our terms of service, but I honestly don't know if somebody's running a full accounting suite off of a server that they have rented from us or not. I just know, customer, just from a contact and talking to them initially maybe on pre-sales, but after that, it's entirely, I would assume that we are, yeah, but I don't know for sure. I mean, the majority of, when you have a separated environment, shared versus dedicated, it's kind of difficult to say that these people do just this and these people do just that. So.
Yeah, and on the Verio side, we're really a pure hoster at this point. We have some OEM agreements and that sort of thing, so we kind of have to stay focused there. We are looking at the application space, but because we haven't seen a model yet that we thought we could implement that would work well, we've kind of taken a wait-and-see attitude on it. Probably next year you'll see some significant changes there, but for now, Verio is really more of a pure-play hoster.
You had a question here?
Hey, Derek, is it true that everybody's stuck around and maybe through all the questions and answers that you brought T-shirts with?
For anybody that's got room left in the suitcase, yeah, I've got about this big suitcase is full of shirts. So if you want a shirt, please come up and see me, and I'd be happy to give you one, or I may have enough for two per person. So thanks, you, Bob Cichone, Crystal Tech President and COO.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So I have a question. I wanted to see what your future product roadmap includes. And I know you're doing IS7 and Longhorn, but are you looking to get into the offering of software as a service or software plus service model where ISVs come to you for the platform so they don't have to have the infrastructure costs in-house?
Well, if you listen to Ray Ozzie, it's software and services, not software as a service. But anything is, the future is obviously open. I mean, I think that the industry is trending that way. So yeah, we're most definitely open to the potential of expanding our business and business relationship with a lot of our sort of higher end resellers and whatnot. We have a product, our control center, that could easily be seen as a software and a service that we could either, since everybody that we host uses it, Crystal Tech ourselves uses it from a networking and back end standpoint. We've discussed over the course of the last several years expanding that and creating a separate service for that type of application. So yeah, most definitely. I think the nice part about this being in this business and being in this industry is everything was moving our way. So really the future is open for us. So.
And on the Verio side, we don't have anything I can talk about formally at this point in time. There's lots of planning and things going on. We are going to take a baby step there at TechEd next month. I shouldn't say baby step. We have a pretty big announcement next month that we'll do at TechEd. But for right now, I can't really get into. At this moment in time, we're going to remain a pure play hoster.
One last question. You guys talk about web hosting all the time. What about your mail solution, like host and message collaboration, Exchange, and live communication server? You guys offer that, or are you looking to offer that in the future?
We've looked at it. We've looked at offering Exchange hosting. Our background is essentially shared and dedicated. We don't get into specifics from a service standpoint in that respect. I honestly can't say one way or the other. It's something that we've discussed, something that we discuss occasionally, not just Exchange hosting, but live communication. You're putting me on the spot, Michael. I appreciate that. I'm going to see a significant decrease in our SPLA payment this month. But again, the future's open, so who knows?
And on the Verio side, you've touched on a couple things that are on our roadmap, but again, I'm not allowed to release anything at this time.
So, besides these two, we actually have a variety of partners. There's a whole separate partner ecosystem. We didn't really focus our talk on that aspect of it today because we're really gearing it towards developers today. But we have a vibrant partner ecosystem that deals with the messaging side as well as the hosting side.
I'm just wondering if you can both briefly touch on your data center in terms of, business contingency. Are you running obviously 24/7? Are you SAS 70 level 2 compliant and those sorts of things?
Crystal Tech was a privately owned company for many, many years, so we weren't SAS 70 compliant. We're part of a public corporation now. We just recently completed a SAS 70 Type 1 audit and made it through that successfully. SAS 70 Type 2 is on the roadmap for us in the near future. We are in a Tier 1 data center. We don't own our own data center. We lease data center space from a very well-known provider, and we're in Phoenix, or like in the ideal place for non-disasters, I guess. The biggest disaster is the heat. But we are in definitely a Type 1 data center, N+1, and they haven't had an unscheduled power outage for over 50 years and whatnot. So.
And on the Vareo side, I can't, again, everyone's kind of dancing around this software as a service project. All hosters are looking at software as a service. We don't have a choice. We know that's kind of where the market will be eventually, if not sooner, if not later. But Vareo's still in the process of a lot of deep planning. I really just can't touch on anything today.
Are your servers space all outsourced though right now at this point?
No, I'm sorry. Vareo's servers, Vareo has 2 premier data centers. One in Sterling, Virginia, the other in Lundy, California, and that's where our hosting is done.
Oh, jeez.
I actually have a question about, since you guys both are premier Windows developer hosting and you do a lot of ASP.NET hosting, how do you find is managing a lot of servers, like if you got 1,000 servers running multiple customers with different type of application, how do you choose to manage ASP.NET in your data center?
You can hit that one first. And Michael, you don't get a T-shirt.
Well, Vareo, in terms, that's kind of an internal question, but Vareo does implement MOM 2005, and we're in the MOM 2007 TAP program. And we do a lot of our own work in terms of building our own things to monitor and manage servers on top of that.
And I'll parrot that, as awful as it sounds. Again, everything that we try and build it internally. So we have some third-party monitoring apps. We also have a server admin team that is just sick when it comes to building applications and building the things that they need and that they really feel that they want. Rather than spend the money, they'll spend the time and build, write scripts, build apps that are going to be able to do the level of monitoring that they really want. So there's a lot of products out there that a lot of people use. I think buying everything off the shelf is not necessarily the best way of doing it, but it certainly can help supplement what you build and use internally for monitoring all the services that are running on the server at any given time.
Quiet group. Any other questions? So we'll get you your free T-shirts. Again, thank you very much for coming today. It's great to be with you. And one more question.
I know you got the slides, and there was a lot of good sites on there. Are we going to have to make the slides?
The slides will be available as part of the mix. Yes. So again, you've probably seen this in every presentation today, but please fill out your evaluations. They are very important to us. So just encourage you to do that. And I'll be around the rest of today and as well as tomorrow, as well as these two gentlemen.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions, feel free to track us down. And thank you very much for coming today.